Hello and welcome to the Fabric Spotlight, a series of talks where we discuss trends and the cloud and IoT infrastructure space. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to have a chat with Chris Bedi, the CIO of ServiceNow. Chris, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks, Rajan. Great to be here.
Yeah, the absolute the wonders of internet that I'm sitting here in India at the night while I'm interviewing in the daytime, and certainly remote working takes a whole new meaning here.
Absolutely.
So before we talk about your role in ServiceNow and ServiceNow itself, I'd like to have a quick background for the audience about your journey till now, your background, what got you here, and what made you take up what you do at ServiceNow.
Sure. My background by education, I'm a computer engineer, went to school at the University of Michigan. Out of college, I spent, about the first decade of my career at KPMG in a consulting capacity. Great experience. I kind of think about it as like dog years. You work a ton, get a ton of diversity of experience across industries. And after that, I moved internal here in the Silicon Valley, of company VeriSign, internet security company. Spent about 8 to 10 years there, which is rare, right? A lot of people move around a lot in the Valley. I stayed put, was a great run. Worked at JDSU, a hardware company. And then now here I'm the CIO at ServiceNow.
That's quite a change from JDSU to ServiceNow. Two completely different businesses, I would presume, Chris.
It is, but what I like to do is just learn, right? If you can learn the nuances of an industry, I think it adds to your portfolio. And a hardware business is very different than a software business, both from a growth profile, margin profile, the dynamics of the supply chain. And so, but all that I think has added to my, call it skill set as I'm in my new role.
Fantastic. So let's just talk about a little bit about ServiceNow itself and what made you excited about what you're doing, how you are impacting the business, what your thoughts about IT as it pertains to not just ServiceNow, but to the industry.
Sure. ServiceNow, for those people who don't know it, we're an enterprise software company based out of Silicon Valley. Our mission is really to make the world of work better for people. And we serve, global markets across a variety of industries. And if you think about what we do, we really power workflows, and we power the workflows for IT to make the business of IT be better and faster as they serve the needs of the corporation, which, by the way, is becoming more and more important. The role of IT and the role of technology in driving everyone's transformation. The second is around powering employee workflows. How do we help employees have a much more engaged and productive experience while they are at work? Take all the waste out of the system. But at the same time, we're taking out the waste, take the risk out of the system. So we do things like, onboarding apps. We help out with legal workflows, finance workflows, HR workflows, all across the board. And then last but certainly not least, one of our fastest growing businesses around customer workflows. With post-COVID, it's been interesting. Everyone is doubling down on digital services, either to retain a connection to their customer because the traditional supply chains and routes to maintain that connection have been disrupted, or to monetize new digital services. And our customer workflows really power that end-to-end experience from touching the customer via mobile or chat all the way through that back-end infrastructure and powering all the operations in the middle. So having a great time here at ServiceNow. My role, IT at a high growth company, it's really helping the company grow, leveraging technology, things like machine learning, analytics, platforms such as CRM, CPQ, et cetera, but also how do we help the company scale? So I really, with our transformation efforts, focus on three things. How do we increase the speed at which ServiceNow operates? Speed is a competitive advantage. How do we drive more intelligence into all of our workflows? And that's leveraging all of the data we have, marrying it up with machine learning to help us, the humans, operate better with algorithms giving us recommendations on our various decisions so we can perform those faster and better. And the third is, how do I create great experiences for all of the stakeholders at ServiceNow, the employees, the customers, and our partners?
Wonderful, wonderful. ServiceNow has been on a tear, and clearly IT must be playing a very critical role, especially in the infrastructure and the cloud infrastructure space. As you know, Fabric is in the cloud infrastructure business. How does the cloud pertain to what ServiceNow is doing? How does IT fit into that, and what's your vision for ServiceNow as it pertains to the cloud?
Yeah, I'll give you an external and then an internal view. I think the external view is what I see, and I have the privilege of talking to, our global CIO customer base, which is about 80% of the Fortune 500. And the migration to the cloud has only accelerated. And COVID has been a massive tailwind because companies that weren't as far along in their journey, quite frankly, some of them were exposed in the March and April timeframe as their operations couldn't function. So cloud migration has accelerated, and people are looking at more the connected cloud. You mentioned IoT at the beginning. So, and I mentioned digital services. So we're seeing a lot of traditional companies, you take Philips Lighting. They now have lighting as a service, as a digital subscription revenue offering. Honeywell Connected Enterprise, Caterpillar. So people really leaning into IoT, the edge cloud, and to drive those new types of business models. So externally, ton of tailwind. I think the acceleration of adoption is absolutely a real thing. And then internally, we look to leverage cloud in the same ways that the rest of the companies are doing. We're using it for scale. So, example, in corporate IT, we just migrated our ERP system, our data lake, and everything to the Microsoft cloud, as an example. But we partner with all three cloud providers, whether it's Azure, AWS, GCP. And we use them for scale, bursting capacity up and down as we do various external events. So we leverage the cloud a lot internally as well.
Nice, nice. I mean, continue along the same vein. ServiceNow itself, I presume, would consider as a SaaS provider, and you would be an app service provider. Plus, you would also be utilizing the cloud IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Can you describe the experiences from both sides? How synergistic IT is with respect to how you're using it versus how you offer it to the customers. The synergy between how you use it internally with how customers use ServiceNow.
Sure. So, I like to call it drinking our own champagne. Some people call it dog fooding, but I use all the same software that we sell our customers. And we've driven a ton of value out of it for all the same reasons our customers use it. I think in our estimate, we've driven what would have been a $10 million investment if I was a paying customer of ServiceNow, about $100 million in value. But we leverage also the infrastructure as a service providers. As I mentioned, we migrated our ERP and other data lake and everything else to the cloud. So we have very, very little on-prem anymore. And as we provide services to our customers, they expect the same things. They want us to be able to scale up and down, but they are also looking at ServiceNow as help me accelerate my journey to the cloud. So we're helping a lot of customers get a handle on what is your IT estate today? How do we help you map all the dependencies in it so your time of your journey to the cloud goes faster and it goes cheaper? And even in our own journey to the cloud, leveraging our own software, we got there 3 times faster. And once you're in the cloud, you still need to manage things and monitor things because in the end, the IT department's still responsible. So that's again where we partner with the different cloud providers. So whether you're looking to provision workloads in the cloud, deprovision them, right? As there's a rapidly changing environment nowadays, or you're looking to monitor those workloads in the cloud for optimal performance, scalability, failover, et cetera. That's again where we partner heavily with the major cloud providers to help our customers do that. And again, I'll use Fabric, a frictionless fabric between ServiceNow and the different cloud providers as IT is managing all these workloads increasingly more and more in the public cloud.
I'm sure security comes up as a refrain in terms of not only the security of the cloud itself, but the security of the app and security of the various pieces, including ServiceNow. What do you see as the biggest security concern for your customers, as well as what you see as the security view of what ServiceNow itself is offering? So I'm just laying this out as a very broad question. You could take it any which way you want.
Rajan, it would not be a complete conversation unless we talked about cyber. So cyber is, one of those never-ending, battles, so to speak, and the complexity is only increasing. So it's a super important topic to hit on. So yeah, security, I think there used to be, and I'll just go back 5 to 7 years. Oh, if we go to the cloud, is it going to be really secure? And I think that's kind of gone away as a concern. It's more of, I need to apply the same rigor internally that I would as I do externally. And in some cases, it's actually maybe gotten a little bit easier to secure stuff in the cloud if you have a handle on the governance. So the key security concerns I hear externally with our customer base are, do I have a handle on what is everything in the cloud? Right? What is my estate? What assets are in the cloud? What is linked to what? And do I have the right business context for those assets? So I know what my high value assets are versus medium or low. So getting a handle on that, super important. And then, some stuff hasn't changed, right? Which is, once you have a handle on those things, what is the security posture of all those assets and those workloads? How can I run automatic scanning? We don't do that as a company. As an example, you'll have people like Qualys, Tenable, Rapid7 that help out with scanning. That'll give you a sense of your vulnerabilities. But once you do have those vulnerabilities, what do you do with them? How do you get to automated patching? How do you marry up those vulnerabilities to that business context? And that's actually where we partner with a lot of these vulnerability scanning tools. And we're helping a lot of companies get to that automated patching, much faster, in terms of, call it, remediating security vulnerabilities when they do arise. Because we have to accept that we're going to have security vulnerabilities. It's really a matter of how fast one can resolve them and remediate that vulnerability. And the same thing with security incidents. So, and internally, obviously, cyber is very, very high on the risk list. And we, treat it accordingly in terms of making sure that the products we ship are secure in terms of our coding practices, but also ongoing rigor, whether it's using NIST, ISO 27001. We also serve the federal government, compliance with FedRAMP, and just constantly raising the bar on our security posture. But using our own platform as an example, we saw an 84% improvement in our security and risk posture over the last 2 years. So security, to net it out, was at the top of the list as far as risk concerns, is at the top of the list, will remain near the top of the list. And I just think we need to drive more automation into the security space so we're managing it at scale as more and more workloads go into the cloud.
We have been talking about more workloads going to the cloud, as you just mentioned right now. Kubernetes has emerged as a means of migrating or as a platform to be used while depositing applications in the cloud. How do you see that within your strategy, or how do you see that playing out in the industry? The adoption of Kubernetes, how it is managed, how it is secured. What are the innovations you think that will be coming along there?
Yeah, I think it's emerging, as you said, right? And I think at mass scale, it's still early innings on it. I think we're not in the hype cycle. I think people have realized, yeah, this is the way to go. Now it's figuring out how to really operate it at scale and transition the existing digital services to a Kubernetes architecture. Because you can read the white papers and it seems easy, but it's not the easiest thing to do. So that's where I see it right now. But is it the way of the future? For sure. And I see a lot of companies in the industry, some further along than others, of course. Most are still in the early innings of adoption, but not yet at scale. So I think for the fabric, I think, you know, developing a set of best practices, the how-to technology that would further and accelerate this transition could be really useful.
Nice, nice. And talk about remote work where I am right now remotely. Uh, what do you see as the challenges for your workforce working remotely in a distributed fashion? Is it security issues that keep you awake? Is it the quality of service issues? What are the higher order bits that you see as people are working remotely at this point? And how long do you see this remote work happening?
So I think, a handful of questions, Rajan, arise when this remote work. I think the first worry on most leaders' minds was, can my workforce be productive? So you think about things like, do they have access to all the right tools, all the right apps that they need, right? And can they access all those things? Now, obviously, being in the cloud helps with that. Okay, now that they have access, what's the quality of service, right? Around accessing those apps. And am I delivering the right quality of service so people can be productive? And you think about performance monitoring and corporations needing to think about things differently. And as my head of operations and infrastructure, Tomer, said, I've gone from having 50, 60 offices around the world to now I have 11,500, because each employee has their own office and you have to worry about their bandwidth, their network, their security, their everything. So that was a big deal to make sure all of that got figured out. And some organizations who are further along transitioned seamlessly. Some who hadn't yet had, global cloud-based VPNs and application performance monitoring were less further along. They had a lot of work to do in the March and April timeframe. So that was a big concern. Security as well, right? Now that people are home, how am I securing the network that they're accessing, or making sure vulnerabilities don't creep in to the corporate infrastructure? So security, a big concern. I think another one was around, but what we've seen, and as I've talked to industry CIOs around the world, largely people have figured out a way to be productive, and that's great. Now, the next chapter of this is going to become, when people start coming back to the workforce or the office, right, materially, and half of us are at home, maybe half of us are in the office, can we maintain that same level of engagement? And I think, there's a set of startups still yet to be defined, that will create today, that will shrink the divide between the experience of working from home and being in the office. So if you imagine, let's rewind to January. I know it seems like about 10 years ago, but it was only 5, 6 months ago. And if 8 people were in a conference room in the office and 2 people were remote, the experience for the remote people was very, very different. And I do think that what the pandemic has shown us is that remote work is great and people can be productive, will persist. And we will forever be in this hybrid work environment with some people in the office, some at home. And in that environment, we cannot afford it for that remote to feel like a very different experience. So I think there will be a handful of startups, and I'm not smart enough to say what they are, but that will shrink that divide, where it doesn't matter if you're at home or in work, or if there's 8 people in the conference room and 2 at home, that will feel like the same thing. And I'm looking forward to that innovation. It'll be great.
Yeah, it's quite exciting. I love the phraseology from saying that you had 75 locations to, would you say 10,000 locations now, or
11,500,
15,000?
which is our approximate employee count.
10,000. Yeah, that's quite amazing. And the second observation you made is also pretty interesting. We talked about hybrid clouds. Now we've got to talk about hybrid workforces and how to make them productive.
Some of these habits that we've formed during the pandemic, I think, are going to persist. Like the thought of, getting on a plane, traveling across the country, 6 hour flight for a 3 hour internal meeting. I don't think people are going to do that anymore, because we've proven that we can be engaged and productive while being on video. And technologies like Zoom are fantastic. And Eric, who's the founder of Zoom, has done a great job with this tech to help everyone be productive. But I think technologies like this will only get better and more immersive so that people feel closer together, even though they may not be physically in the same spot.
Now that you talk about new startups emerging and entrepreneurship, you must have seen a fair share of them from your vantage point, quite a few of them talking to you. In general, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs who come to you, either about working with a larger organization like ServiceNow or in general on how they should succeed, or whatever advice that you would give to entrepreneurs?
So, one macro theme that I've noticed after COVID-19 hit is just the speed. The expectation of speed and time to value has gone up like this, right? The days of like 4 to 6 months of value and things like that, those are gone. Now it's like days and weeks. So if you're an entrepreneur out there, I'd focus on time to value, and how are you accelerating that for your target buyer. I think the other one is just clarity on what problem you're solving and how quick you can solve it. So, and which gets back to product market fit. So I think in this environment where, every CIO on the planet has said digital transformation is only accelerating. And there's a lot of, budget conversations. Maybe this budget is shrinking or that budget is shrinking. I haven't talked to a single CIO who said their digital transformation budget is shrinking. In fact, the corporation's pouring more money into it. So with that in mind, CIOs, CTOs, CDOs are being asked to innovate at record speed. So there's an appetite and a hunger for startups and innovation, which is great. But to meet that, right, you got to be on your front foot with clarity on the use case, clarity on the problem it solves, and that time to value.
Well, thanks very much, Chris. This has been an absolutely enjoyable talk. In fact, your observations and some of the key elements that you brought up, I'm sure will be very interesting for our audience. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon with another episode of the Spotlight series. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you very much, Rajan. And I look forward to the day we can do this in person, hopefully soon.